Oh, what a time. Oh, what a place to be. 3:30 p.m. Mountain Time. Orange and blue today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason, canned rock music, and also the Denver Broncos coaching search continues. We're here to talk about that and more. Mace, good day to you.
Good day to you, Cecil. You know what? I have nothing against the canned rock music, but I mean, these are from production music libraries, right? And you can buy the rights.
Royalty-free music.
Yeah, or just, minimal royalty because it's part of a production music library. I think we have access to a production music library because I'm thinking to myself, maybe instead of the rock music, we need something that's got a little NFL Films quality to it, right?
Right.
And there are NFL Films tunes that are in some of these production libraries. I guess what I'm saying is maybe we could get a little Sam Spence going on here.
Right.
You know,
like always down for some Sam Spence.
Yeah. Which is there was one of the all-time great NFL Films music tunes is actually "What Do We Do with the Drunken Sailor?" What do we do with the drunken sailor? What do we do with the drunken sailor? What do we do with the drunken sailor? Early in the morning. I mean,
right.
If you take the words out, you just hum it, and you can see Roger Staubach going back to pass, or Franco Harris cutting through the line or something like that.
Right. Some NFL Films music would be good for us. I'm also over the moon because continue to write about the NFL draft, talk about what they need on offense, what they need on defense, which will be out later today. Mace, you and I are doing some stuff, and the Broncos are looking at Jim Caldwell. So we got a lot to get to, including my secret surprise of a Senior Bowl announcement was made. So I'm writing up the players that I'm most excited to see. Not the actual preview, but it's all about me, Mace. So it's who am I excited to see in Mobile? So I'm jotting that down as we speak.
Yes, well, tell us who are you going to give us a preview?
Jaron Hall.
Oh my gosh, you are! Are you Jaron Hall's agent?
No, but Rashawn Johnson and Jaron Hall, because Rashawn Johnson could have started for every team in the country except he was at Texas, so he was the backup that everyone needs to know, running back talent. And how many times have we seen that backup do good things? You know what I mean? That guy, Priest Holmes. Hell, same school, right? Texas. Mm-hmm. Priest Holmes was a backup to Ricky Williams and, did a little cup of coffee with Baltimore, whatever, returned some kicks, and then, was a near 2,000-yard rusher with the Chiefs. So, yeah, I love me some backup running backs. And I love me a quarterback, mid-round guy. Hell, we saw Dak Prescott at that game. I know he might have been a first-round pick if he made his flight to Denver for his workout, but, we saw Kirk Cousins at that game. So, there's been some mid-round guys to make a little bit of noise.
Here's the thing, though, and I know you're on board the Jaron Hall Express. I'm not there, right? Now, I reserve the right to change my opinion after I see him in person.
Yes.
I'm not there yet. I've got to see it. And I think that he is someone that can play his way up, but I've got to see what he does down there.
Hopefully not too far up, because that game you can play yourself in the first round. I don't want him that far up.
Yeah, and that can come, fraught with its own set of risks, because sometimes you overvalue Senior Bowl week, sometimes you undervalue it. It's funny because I was talking yesterday about how there are teams that can overvalue a good week down there, and that can lead to reaches. An example in recent years, Andy Isabella out of UMass absolutely dazzled down in Mobile when he was there.
Looked better than Michael Pittman.
Yeah, did not translate. So sometimes, you have to be careful about the players that kind of turn everyone's head, and do your due diligence. Now, that being said, I can think back to a couple of years ago when we were all very curious going down there, at least those few of us that went down there, because that was the COVID year.
Yeah.
Those few of us that went down there were very curious about a young man out of Wisconsin, Whitewater, who had not played in the previous fall, named Quinn Miners. And that dude delivered. And
he was owning fools.
Yes. Like you saw it translated that he missed the season. He was coming from Division III. No problem. He was the best lineman on the field. for most of that week. And we've seen the proof be in the pudding the last couple of years. The Broncos got a very good one who I think is going to be in this offensive line for a long time.
Yeah, and
He's
probably
scheme independent, as we're finding too. You just got to tell him, okay, he may have to grow out the belly a little bit this year, but he can make it work.
Not against more belly, as long as it's not mine. And Quinn Miners might be one of the 2 offensive linemen that stays the same for the Broncos this year.
I mean, are we talking about him? Are we saying Garrett or Lloyd staying the same?
Garrett. Although there's been a suggestion by some media types, I'll tell you off air who it was, that Garrett would restructure. I'm like, nah, I don't want to push anything back. You have no motivation. You pay him and then you get out of it after this year, most likely.
Agreeing to restructure, you've got to have some reason to do it. Like Graham Glasgow last year, that made sense because it assured him of more money than he would have had otherwise. A guy that on the Broncos I would watch for a similar restructure this year is Ronald Darby, based on coming off of the injury, how much is left that's guaranteed, which is very little. There's incentive to restructure that would give him a bit more assurance that he comes back from the ACL. And look, you need 3 corners and a good slot corner anyway. So you need 4 guys, right? So I think you need Ronald Darby. Even though Damari Mathis did emerge, I think you need Ronald Darby. And then you got Surtain, you got Mathis, you got Darbs, you got K'Wan Williams at the slot. You're feeling pretty daggum good about that.
Yeah, man. In my draft piece at denversports.com, I talked about guard being a need for this team. I've done an early swipe of the guard class. It's not good.
No,
it's not good. I mean, tackle class is really star-studded and kind of top-heavy, which is cool, and it's good for the Broncos to get a right tackle.
Well, it's good, but they might be picking it like pick 29 is the problem. The Broncos might be in the danger zone though, being able to get good value at tackle.
Don't say danger zone. Then I start thinking about Archer, but they've got perhaps one there. We'll tease that for a little bit later. But Dalton Reisner might return because the offensive line, the guard class, is not good.
Free agency class isn't good either. I mean, at guard. I mean, I was talking about free agents a little while ago on the O-line. I mean, I mentioned on coffee break this morning, maybe if you don't go for a draft pick at tackle, maybe it's a Mike McGlinchey perhaps, if the Niners don't re-sign him to plug in at right tackle. But it's not a good free agent market. It's not a good draft market. This is a moment where the Broncos' needs and the depth of the market sadly do not align. And that's going to limit what they do as they try to reshuffle and rebuild this offensive line. And it could mean Dalton Reisner is back because it's going to be whoever the coach is that's going to be making the bulk of the free agency decisions here. It's going to be, George Peyton, I imagine, is going to have a lot to do with the draft, but the coach is going to be saying, okay, this is the guy I want at a position. And it's possible. Let's say you live in the universe of Jim Harbaugh being the coach or somebody else, and they look at the market and they're like, oh yeah, Dalton Reisner's the best free agent guard. We should re-sign him. So the door, strangely enough, the coaching change makes it more likely that Dalton Reisner returns. If there were no coaching change, I would say he's gone. But this is one of those moments where the coaching change may actually give a player a better chance of sticking around. Doesn't happen very often, but it might happen with Dalton.
Right. Might happen, and we can keep our fingers crossed. Dalton, all of our good buddies, the hug line. What'd you call it? The reception line? The wedding reception line for Dalton?
It was wedding reception line, but it was the hug line. Mm-hmm. Every reporter got a hug.
Yeah. He's a loving guy.
He is. And I think he was toward the end of the season, as he was coming to grips with the reality that he may not be in Denver anymore. He was very reflective.
Right.
I would encourage people, if you just kind of want to get a sense for like where he was mentally, go back and watch the press conference that he had 6 days ago when he got the Darren Williams Good Guy Award, or, read my piece at Denver Fan or dadgummit, denversports.com.
We'll get there.
Anyway, we're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there. Jim Caldwell's getting there to an interview with the Broncos. And I know some fans, Mark here in the chat room, really likes that as an option. Jim Caldwell's a good interview. Jim Caldwell's a good man. He's a good coach. He can set you right. Maybe he's not the top of the list. Maybe he's behind even Dan Quinn. Maybe he's 4th or 5th on the Broncos wish list. That's fine, but it's not an outlier. It's not, they're not interviewing somebody they shouldn't be. And if Jim Caldwell was the coach, while it's not my first pick, Mace, not my second pick, I would still get on board with it because Jim Caldwell's a really good football guy.
Yeah, very good football guy, very good quarterback person. I mean, and I think he would have a real good chance of getting Russell Wilson on the right path. And because of that, I believe if Jim Caldwell were the Broncos hire, he would have success. I'm not saying win a Super Bowl, but I think he would get this thing back on solid footing. Kind of the way he did in Detroit when he took over a team that had some talent, was kind of listing a little bit, had missed the playoffs. I believe the previous 2 seasons when he arrived, they were kind of a disappointment. He got them back to the playoffs really quick, and he had 3 winning seasons in 4 years, which in Detroit is an amazing accomplishment. But the thing that one of the things I do like about him is the way he works with quarterbacks. He's got a very detail-oriented approach. You can find this story at the Washington Post last month, but when he worked with Peyton, after Peyton's first year with him in 2002, Caldwell put together film of the interceptions, the almost interceptions, and then the almost touchdowns. So in other words, like almost interceptions. Okay, they should have probably been picked off, but the defender dropped it because, let's face it, a lot of defensive players are failed offensive players, right? They couldn't catch the ball, put the ball on the ground. Oh, but you're a good athlete. We'll go put you on defense there. And the result of that, and there's the old cliche, every interception has a story. Every near interception has a story too. You found that some things were the quarterback's fault and some weren't. And then on top of all that film review, Caldwell noticed something in Peyton Manning's footwork, thought he was getting too happy-footed in the pocket. And so he did this drill where he took the heavy blocking bags, and when Peyton started to kind of get too shuffly, as it were, he'd throw the bags at Peyton's feet. And what did Peyton do that year? MVP.
Yeah.
And
the Caldwell thing, it's got Peyton feelings to it, even though some in the chat again, no on Caldwell, like, for me, it's like, if it's get the Peyton green light, Peyton Manning, by the way.
At the minimum, I think giving Caldwell an interview is doing right by somebody who is very important to this franchise and very to all things Broncos. Right. So Peyton has publicly been stumping for Jim Caldwell. This was Caldwell's second interview this week. He also interviewed with Carolina. And so I think it was good for the Broncos to give him a look. And oh, by the way, interesting thing, we now know of 7 coaching candidates, right? 4 of them took teams to Super Bowls as head coaches. Jim Caldwell, Dan Quinn, Jim Harbaugh, and Sean Payton. So there's a pattern developing here. Frankly, Cease, I like this group of coaches the Broncos are interviewing much better than last year's group.
Yes. You see a pattern, and it's that pattern of success. It's a pattern of experience, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate the Broncos looking at a Jim Caldwell. And to disagree with the chat room, like, I don't think it's the Rooney Rule. And there's plenty I could say about the Rooney Rule as a mixed race person myself. Like, the Rooney Rule has gotten a little out of whack with the original intent, like good intentions for the rule. And then now it seems to be like, okay, some teams do just want to check a box, if we will. I don't believe that's the case with Caldwell.
I don't think this
and the Broncos.
No, I think, look, do I think Jim Harbaugh is their first choice? Yes, I do. I do think that is option A, but you have to cultivate multiple paths here. Sean Payton, he's got 3 teams chasing him now because the Texans have asked for permission and the Cardinals have asked for permission. Now, Sean Payton has talked about how he values ownership, but at the same time, he may look at I don't think the Texans are going to be in play because I think that's such a mess, even though they're going to get a top quarterback in this year's draft. Arizona is interesting because you do have Kyler Murray, who Sean Payton has talked about his fondness for. And these are not the Arizona Cardinals of the Bill Bidwell years. Michael Bidwell knows what he's doing. And it's one reason why the Cardinals as a franchise have abandoned that kind of laughing stock, also ran status that they had for so many years, is that the son is very much unlike the father in how he's gone about running the team. And so you don't look at the Cardinals the way you did maybe 15 years ago and say, they don't have quality ownership at the top. It's not the case anymore. And so Arizona is really intriguing, I think, for Sean Payton. And that may be a better fit if he doesn't go to Dallas or Los Angeles.
Yeah. And we got it coming together here in the chat room talking about Jim Harbaugh. And John asks, does Russ fit a Harbaugh offense? Harbaugh fits anybody. And I'll say this about Colin Kaepernick, and we've said it before. Kaepernick was, especially young Kaepernick, was very limited in what he did. Very limited. He was a two-read guy. He'd make two reads and run. They'd give him a high, they'd give him a low, and they'd tell him to run. And they got to the Super Bowl. So with a young Kaepernick, look at what Harbaugh did coming from Alex Smith. And Alex Smith, while athletic, certainly isn't the athlete that Kaepernick is. So does Russ fit a Harbaugh offense? I think Harbaugh could fit. He's like one of them gator grip ratchets you see on the infomercials, Nace, like where it's like whatever size bolt. You don't need to look at your toolbox. You got the gator grip. That's what he is for coaches.
The allure of Harbaugh is that he's scheme independent. That's the thing. Like this is not a coach who says, I'm installing this scheme, we're doing it this way. He is a coach who philosophically on offense and working with Greg Roman in those years in San Francisco, the philosophy is how can we mold what we have to the talent that we have? Personally, it's the style that I favor. And that's why you look for coaches that have succeeded with different types of players, different types of schemes, etc. It's frankly one of the allures of Jim Caldwell, if you do kind of go to that second tier of candidates, is he's done very well with Peyton Manning, Joe Flacco, Matthew Stafford. These are three very different quarterbacks, right? He got the best play out of all of them. He improved all of them. Joe Flacco was a Super Bowl MVP working with Jim Caldwell. Got the big contract, the $20 million a year deal. Matthew Stafford, he went from a quarterback who you didn't know if he was going to be really the guy long term to somebody who became perennially one of the better quarterbacks in football. And then Sean McVay kind of finished the job with Matthew Stafford and winning the Super Bowl a year ago. So,
right,
these are the coaches that I really like to see. It are coaches that are not married to scheme, that they are adaptable, right? It's frankly, I think if you talk about some of the offensive coaches coming out of the Shanahan McVay tree, I think sometimes they're a little bit too scheme dependent. That can be a weakness. I think Cliff Kingsbury, even though he didn't come from that tree, I think he was a very scheme dependent coach. And it's one of the reasons why we're talking about him no longer being the Arizona Cardinals coach today.
Right. And I want to remind people about Matthew Stafford. I got Georgia Bulldogs on my mind, Mace. He was
right now. Good.
Exactly.
Grief, look at him.
He was a below 60% passer. It's like when Josh Allen
Jim
came out
Caldwell
and be like,
there.
Oh, how did he do that? How did he do it? He was under 60% passing at Wyoming. Well, Matthew Stafford was under 60% passing at Georgia. And I think it was like in the mid 50s. It was like 52, 55. Like, wasn't good.
His first 5 years in Detroit, if you take those 5 years, put them together, he was under 60%.
Yeah, until
he became a 65% passer with Jim Caldwell. 5%, maybe it doesn't sound like a lot to some of you watching and listening. That's huge. That's the difference between being one of the worst quarterbacks in accuracy and mid-tier to upper mid-tier. That's what you need at that time. That's what you needed.
And you need a guy to get him there. And that was Caldwell.
Yeah. And that's why if you're Russell Wilson, Caldwell may be a guy that you could really get behind if you're willing to listen to him. And that's the thing. Russ has got to be willing to accept coaching from somebody other than Jay Keeps.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Not your personal coach. And you know what? If you gave Russ Jim Caldwell and you didn't listen to him, you know what?
You're the problem.
That's fine. A year from now, we're doing Orange and Blue Today, talking about Broncos going into the quarterback pool in the draft, and Jim Caldwell getting to make the choice on which quarterback he wants to develop. Right. So yeah.
Unless they already get him in Jared Hall.
Yeah. And Brad, oh gosh, here we go. And Brad makes a good point. Greg Penner can learn something from these interviews. You're getting a sense for different types of coaches. And I think if you're Greg Penner, you're figuring out what you want. And now that being said, Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton, the big personality coaches, that's not Jim Caldwell. And so beyond the quarterback position, Caldwell may not be the exact fit that you're looking for organizationally for the Broncos. But maybe you start kind of reviewing it and you think, all right, there's what he's talking about with Russell Wilson. This is the kind of teaching that we've got to have around him somehow, some way. So I like the net that is being cast. This is much more my type of coaching net than last year's was.
Yes. And I believe it was Brad earlier that was like, don't get your hopes up because it's George Payton. Peyton's just a part of this. This is Penner. And Penner will be looking for different things, and he will be excited by different things. And as a businessman, yes, he doesn't know the football side. But as a football guy, you and I sit down with the football guy, we might get excited and stimulated in a certain way, like George Payton would.
Yeah.
Penner's looking for something different from a different perspective, and I applaud that. Yes, Peyton will be able to put in his 2 cents, but this is a Greg Penner decision, and I'm very anxious and curious to see who he decides on.
Well, Greg Penner is looking for CEO leadership stuff. George Payton is probably maybe looking a little bit more of the football guts of it. And that's, you know what? That's good, because you need the mix of the two. This is not something where it can be straight up, oh, I just want a leader and I'm not worried about the football stuff. No, I think you're getting the mix of both worlds. And of course, you've also got Rob Walton in there. You got Kerry Walton Penner in there, and you've got Condoleezza Rice in there. And certainly Condoleezza Rice knows her football and knows it very well. So you know what? I got a lot of confidence in this group that they're going to get it right. I think this is going to have a different outcome than we've seen in previous years. I'm excited.
Yeah, if you want to say comeback player of the year for Russell Wilson, I'll listen to that. If you want to say playoff run for the Broncos, I'll listen to that. And I think over the last 2 games, that point was proven. At least it should have been proven. Like, even through injuries, the talent was there. Not for Super Bowl team, but like, yes, much more competitive than what their record indicated.
Right. And I think I was mentioning this today to a friend at lunch. Like, when I look back on the season, I think there are 2 games that kind of jump out to me that where you say, okay, you had the injuries, but injuries weren't an excuse. Titans game, Rams game. These teams were as injured as the Broncos were. The Titans were down, 5 starters on defense. You got 10 points on them. And the touchdown was on an explosive, a deep shot. Your sustained drives were absolutely non-existent in that game, even before you had the injuries on the offensive line. So it's not like it was the injuries on the O-line that screwed you over. No. It was struggling before then, right? And the Rams game, that was just a disaster. I mean, so there were moments where it became clear this team could no longer say, oh, it's about injuries. Oh, we got all these guys on injured reserve. Poppycock, you're facing teams that also have a bunch of guys on injured reserve. A difference that the difference is what we're talking about right now with the coaching search. The difference was Mike Vrabel is a better coach than Nathaniel Hackett. Sean McVay is a better coach than Nathaniel Hackett, and they coached rings around Hackett, which is why he doesn't have a job right now.
Right.
So that's
there you go.
That's the way. That's the way it is. I honestly like. One of the things that kind of gets me about the Hackett era, Cease, is how we heard things at the press conference in the early days about how he was going to run things, and then didn't live up to those words, right?
Mm-mm.
Like, I mean, I pointed out in my piece on Albert O yesterday that the Broncos put this clip out last year. That Hackett talked about the bedrock of leadership is communication. Well, you got players that are saying that the communication was terrible. That when playing time is dwindling, that it's not being conveyed to them why it's happening and how this can be remedied, how you can earn your way back to more playing time. And that's why I think it was telling that for Jerry Rosberg, one of the first things he did was kind of get in Albert O's ear a little bit more and let him know what was going on, let him know what he needed to do. And that's in 2 weeks, you saw the light kind of click on, but it never should have come to that. So it's kind of interesting to me how the things that Hackett kind of sold himself with, it was a bill of goods in the end.
Mm-hmm.
It just, there wasn't anything there. It's one of the disappointing things about this year. And this is also why I get fan skepticism. I really understand it, because after the last 6 years and yet another coach hire coming in now, it is just words until we see it in action.
Yes, go make it happen. That's the task for the Denver Broncos. Guess what, Mace, as I learn how to speak English, Old Chicago bought 2 more nights. So
I know. So the pizza party's back for tonight.
Pizza party.
Oh, so where is
playoff pizza party? It's on Union in Lakewood.
Okay.
So,
and next week's pizza party for all those watching?
Highlands Ranch. So both those locations somewhat
so
close.
They gave you an extra home game then down in the ranch.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So
all right.
Come on out tonight if you can, Mace. The snow's cleared up, roads are fine. So
yeah, it's just gray and miserable out there right now, but we need
warm you up with some playoff pizza party at Old Chicago.
Yes. And Big O is going to be there, right? Although he's not really Big O anymore. He's Slender O.
No, he's a little slender. I don't want to say Lil O, but he's like Slender
Slim
O.
Slim. The second time that Big O's not so Big O has come up in my conversation today, because somehow I was talking about right tackles and the revolving door. The original sin was moving Orlando Franklin away from right tackle. Never should have done that.
Yep.
Never should have done that.
Yep.
And boy, and he
didn't want to, but he did.
He didn't want to, and if you bring that up to O, he'll nod his head like I think he appreciates that there are people out there who understand that what they did with him back then was completely wrong and how it screwed things up. I mean, to me, that they've been paying for it ever since. One bad move and you're still paying for it, right? So the carousel keeps on spinning.
How do you fix the curse of Orlando Franklin? Maybe I'll ask him tonight.
Yeah, it's a good question, because he deserved better.
For sure.
Yes.
All right.
They overreacted to the Super Bowl. That's what it was, Cecil.
Oh, yeah.
They overreacted to a bad day when a lot of people had a bad day. Okay? It happened.
Started with Manny. Manny had a bad start.
Right.
Ooh.
Oh, man.
I've always said 3 players had a good game in Super Bowl 48 for the Broncos. Demarius, CJ, even though he only had like 3 carries, and Nate Irvin played really well.
Yeah.
Nate Irvin had a good game.
That
was it.
That's right.
Everyone else sucked. So there you go.
Oh, boy. But let's not revisit that, although we're coming up on the 10th anniversary of the Raheem Moore game here this week.
Oh. I don't like hearing that.
Don't tell Will Peterson that.
I won't.
I find, because it's clear that game did a number on him, And finally, yesterday, I asked him, I said, Will, was that your worst day as a sports fan? And he said, yes. That eats him. I mean, he hates John Fox because of that. He hates Raheem Moore because of that.
No, you should blame Tony Carter and Elvis. Elvis couldn't get around Bryant McKinney, who was a backup, and Tony Carter didn't even touch Jacoby Jones on a third and forever. He didn't jam him or anything. And TC had recovery speed. He should have been able to like disrupt the guy who could run one route.
That wasn't the only time that TC just looked completely lost out there. Yeah, that was kind of a problem for him.
I remember asking John Fox about Tony Carter liking to gamble, meaning on the field.
Yeah.
And Fox like took it as the other like gambling. He's like, I don't know anything about that. I'm like, oh God, Fox, I'm not talking about that.
Oh, well, TC could run a straight line very fast.
Yep.
And that kept him around the league. But in terms of spatial awareness on the field, as we saw in New England in 2013 on a punt, no, wasn't his thing.
Nope.
Oh well, that's okay. Isn't he coaching now?
I'm not sure. Where is Tony Carter? I know I saw him at the Texas versus the Nation game. There's only 3 of them, so it's pretty rare to. And by the way, Latavius Murray from the final Texas versus the Nation game. I know Jacoby Jones was at my first Shrine game down in Houston from Tiny Lane College.
Tony Carter is the defensive coordinator of the Orlando Guardians of the XFL.
Isn't that where that's where Cody went to play? Cody Latimer, right? Isn't he Guardians?
I'm looking it up right now here.
I believe so. I saw a picture. We're Facebook friends.
Cody Latimer Cody Latimer is an Orlando Guardian. Yes.
Yeah. There you go.
So how about that? Another guy who was briefly a Bronco, Stanley Maponga, is on the Orlando Guardians.
Okay.
I'm looking at the roster right now, so it's not.
Looks like if you're a Broncos fan, you better be a Guardians fan on XFL today.
Oh man, we'll see. But we have Wade Phillips coaching Houston though. Like to me, that's if you're. Oh, and not only is Wade Phillips coaching Houston, 2022 training camp, darling mascot, whatever you want to call him, Max Borghi is with the Houston Roughnecks. How about that?
Very good.
Oh, all right. My gosh. Yeah, we're gonna do an XFL breakdown here as the season gets a little bit closer. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We'll do it.
But can I do it the way that Vince McMahon would do it?
Of course.
This is the XFL! Like that?
You almost had the vein poppins too. Can I do if we're doing XFL impressions?
Vocal cords, by the way. I don't know how. I don't know how Vince did that, man.
You need some throw coat tea, baby. I'm going to do the Stone Cold Steve Austin because I always thought it was funny during the first run of the XFL where they would get the pro wrestlers on and then they talk crap about Paul Tagliabue, Mr. Tagliabue. Like I'm like, what poor Paul Tagliabue do to you, Stone Cold? We got a real league of football here, Mr. Tagliabue.
He said it. He sounds like a televangelist when he says the name like that, doesn't he? I mean, Tagliabue. I command you. Send me $15 right now. I command you.
It's a wrap, everybody.
It's our usual end of the show hijinks here on Orange and Blue today when it goes a little bit goofy.
It's only weird if you make it weird. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on Twitter at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey. Don't follow me. Thanks everyone for watching. As always, be safe, be kind, know that you are appreciated. Stay tuned, and please stay frosty.